Welcome to the Daily Standard Podcast, the edited podcast where we bring you all the news that are happening around Kenya and around the globe. Of course, today we are esteemed to have top editors in the Standard Group and a visitor who was our former NTech editor, Nzau Musau. But I'll allow the gentlemen to introduce themselves before we discuss pertinent issues regarding leadership and politics.
This one went for politics.
What do you mean?
You disappear. You left the Standard for politics.
No. My name is Nzau Musau. Yeah, and I'm a senior project manager with one of our local NGOs.
Yes.
And I'm a journalist, I'm an editor, I'm a lawyer, I'm many things. And I'm happy to be here.
You're happy to be back.
Yes.
You almost told us he's a husband.
Yes, I am. It's a fact.
And a father. My name is Ken Mijungu, kama kawaida.
Yes. Yeah. Deputy editor broadcast.
Deputy editor broadcast, and yes.
I'm tempted to call myself senior because Nzau now is senior, so I must be senior double. But Kipkoech Tanui,
Chief senior.
Head of news in the Standard Group,
yeah,
and a political commentator.
Thank you, gentlemen, for showing up for this podcast. I want us to discuss the plight of the deputy president. Is the office cast, Nzau?
It's not a cast office. It's just the way the office is, where it is placed in the hierarchy of things, predisposes that office to a lot of perils. Among them, of course, ambition. You want to become a president. If you are a deputy president, the ambition of any politician is to become the president at the very top. So obviously you are placed in a situation where you're so close and yet so far. And of course it comes with so many pressures. You have to serve your boss, but you also have to be ambitious and show the ambition and begin to cultivate your path to power. So it's a position which, if you notice, is not just the president. Even the deputy governors have a lot of problems because of where they are placed. Yeah, so it requires a lot of skills to navigate through all those perils. And if you are lucky, like some people have been lucky, you're able to surmount the perils.
But when you're talking about perils, I'll throw this to Tanui. In the past, the ambition has become also a problem to very many people in that office. Some of them have been discarded very fast. Others have been thrown along the way during the vice presidency period. Saitoti, Jaramogi Oginga, Limuruan. Yeah.
Well, it's true. You can look at the position in two ways. Yeah. One, it can be a placing, another one, it can be a curse.
Yeah.
A placing because it takes you so close to power. But then also, it's like dancing close to the sun. You can actually burn yourself in that space.
Yeah.
Because then you don't know where to limit yourself. And why I'm saying it's not a curse totally is that Kenya has had two vice presidents who have ascended to presidents.
Yeah. So
half of the presidents we have had have been actually three. That is Moi, Kibaki, and Ruto. So it doesn't mean that it is you are butchered there. It's the degrees to which level are you able to control your ambition without irritating the top guy or making the guy the top guy unsafe, and also his foot soldiers or his kitchen cabinets or those closest to him.
So, Ken,
yes,
the kitchen cabinet, is it so powerful that if you are the deputy president, you must watch your back?
You have to, and I'll tell you, we just need to ascribe this to the Constitution, Article 147, that prescribes the function of a deputy president.
Yeah.
Strictly, the deputy president has no functions. He's principally the assistant to the president.
Yeah.
So you do any other duty. That's why at one point the former president, naitwa nani, Kenyatta, Ruto at one point just say, unajua mimi ni mtu wa mkono, anatumwa hapa. So there's nothing strictly for the deputy president. And then you're talking about vice president and deputy president. If you look at our constitution again, the way it's structured in terms of this leadership, the presidency is one. So there's that fallacy that you tend to think as a deputy president that you're a co-president. So what's that you're saying? You have to look at yourself. You have to be very careful not to burn yourself, and yet you still have to feel what comes with being a deputy president, because you are a co-president. You are because you are elected in one ticket. Now that is where the deputy presidents are exposed, because then how do you draw that line? Especially when you come into power and you're so very good friends, right? And you remember the first time of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, they've been wearing
matching
up with
ties.
what is happening right now in Senegal, you know? And then suddenly you realize that the president needs space to work. But you as a deputy president, who principally you have no function, you need to start doing one Nzau. He's saying you need to start learning your own ropes, tying your own, dotting your own T's, you know, because you have that ambition and it's automatic. When you're a deputy president, the next stage for you is the presidency. Then the president is here and they are not sure this guy is helping me or is
working for his election.
So it brings a lot of problem. That's why the most they can do sometimes is to try and keep you away and check your ambition. Because you remember also the analogy of the baton. Mimi nataka kupatia huyu lakini amekimbia sana. You know, that is what is happening.
Kimbia nyuma.
Yeah.
So Nzau,
Yes.
this baton Ken is talking about passing the baton to the deputy president. Is it also about finances? Because you see, that's the time you are trying to get money. Remember, Jaramogi fell out with Kenyatta because of the East versus West, and maybe Tanui will tell us what was the real cause of that fallout. And this one for Gachagua and Ruto.
Yes, it is indeed. Finances play a big role in politics. Kenyan's election, and any election for that matter, presidential election is very expensive.
Yeah.
So you have really to invest, you have to look for money. Our campaign financing laws are very, very weak, as Ken will tell you. So really, it's how much you are able to pay, to spend on the campaign depends. That is dependent on whether you are going to win or lose an election. So obviously, people who become vice president or deputy presidents, they begin to amass wealth. And also, it seems nowadays it's also a consideration for being appointed a deputy president. If you recall the process for appointing the current deputy president, I am not saying money was exchanged, but we saw what happened. There was a candidate who everybody thought, in fact, the entire region where the current deputy president comes from, they were very clear that they knew the guy was supposed to be appointed, but someone else was appointed. So obviously, we can speculate, all of us. We don't know what happened, but it means, or we get the impression, or the impression is created that whoever wants that ticket should not really be a person like you or Ken or myself.
Yeah.
You really need to be loaded.
And you must bring the numbers and the money.
Yeah, and bring the numbers and the money. So if you are you have all those, you tick all those boxes. You have the right from the right place where there is enough votes, and you're also loaded, then you are more likely going to get appointed. But obviously, that means for the next few years, you spent time either trying to recover what you lost during that period, but also trying to amass enough money for presidential campaign for the next 10 years, because you are assuming that you will not run in the next 5 years if you are just starting a term like in the present case.
So, Tanui, could this be the case with the two gentlemen who are now not seeing eye to eye or are not working in harmony?
I think I'll ask that we step back a little from what Ken was saying, and look at what the promise that President Ruto gave when he was forming his cabinet, that the powers of the deputy president will now be delineated and will never be subservient to anybody.
Yeah.
But other than being the deputy president, will have substantive role.
Yeah.
Hardly 1.5 years later, we are seeing some different chemistry between them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to ask Ken, so before I come to that, do you think that cup was not sealed in giving the deputy president direct powers?
You know, there's the reality and the expectations. There's reality. Kwa ground vitu ni different.
Yeah.
So there was the reality. And then the expectation was that, let's be honest and be candid in this conversation. President William Ruto, towards the end of his term as a deputy president, everyone would agree he was really bullied. There was a lot.
Yeah.
There was a lot. That is the reason why he came up with this statement, because he understood where he was coming from. So when he was making this announcement that Tanui is talking about, the other day he warned us to talk about alluding.
Yes.
We don't allude.
We don't allude. You state.
Swallowed it. So when President Ruto made that announcement, he was proceeding from a very good place.
Yeah.
This happened to me. There is no single deputy president of this country who will ever go through what I went through.
Yeah.
Right? So I think, Tanui, was it well cemented? I don't think it was cemented. I think it was the reality.
Hit.
But also, just to ride on what Ken is saying, if you remember when the president was sworn in, I think early last year, a few months after being sworn in, you recall there was an executive order where quite apart from what is in the constitution, he was given certain duties, and they were outlined. The deputy president was given certain duties. You
Very
remember
clear.
Yeah.
the issues about the coffee, the issues about I think reclamation of
abuse.
Nairobi River or something like that,
Yeah.
and a bit of stuff. So, but the reality of politics is what Ken is talking about, where you have the duties, you have functions to do, but when you are doing those functions, there are guys roaming around and talking about 2022. So obviously, the deputy president will feel a bit.
Which comes to the question that Charles asked me, and I wanted to put it this way: that there is the formal government, and then there is the informal government.
Yeah.
Both of them, both sides, revolve around the politics of money, power, and influence.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And so you have a de facto deputy president with very clear powers, but that are confined to the boardroom. Now, what powers do you wield that people, because in Kenya, people feel you. What delegations come to you? Do you feel that you are the deputy president with the massive influence, or if you show your territory is so wide, won't you be seen as endangering so that it is a career limiting move? Why I say this? Look at Kibaki. Many times when Kibaki was the deputy president, he was accused of confining himself to central Kenya. But if he stepped out of central Kenya, Mwangala would call him political tourists. So he ended up
doing right now.
Yes. Yeah. So the same thing that has happened to Gachagua.
Yeah.
You end up being boxed into where you belong, because to consolidate your foothold and to have a trump card, a card that you can play with, you have to retreat to your ethnic group, because this is ethnic politics. So what you need to show is, if in the next election I have lost, it is seen that I have lost this segment that I or news backs I wrote onto that office, you have cheapened your currency, political currency. So it is always a dilemma. And look at it. If you what was the problem with Jaramogi Oginga? What are the problems he faced? This is the man who the Wazungu had approached and said, we can declare a president. He said, until Kenyatta is released.
Yeah.
Less than 6 years after Kenyatta was released, he was out. The next thing, detention.
Yeah.
By the very person who put him. President Moi, you remember Lee Njiru book, he made it very clear that there were police officers who could not even salute him because they would rather come without the kofia, so that they do the freezing, so that it's a substitute for salute. Yeah. And again, it tells you that PPO had closer access to the president with bigger influence, and felt he had bigger space to play on than the deputy. Now you come to Ruto, almost same thing. Raila was a prime minister. The role may not have been very clear, but if you want to see the chaos that happens between number 1 and 2, look at Kalonzo as vice president, and look at Raila as prime minister, and Uhuru and Kibaki as the president, and then go back at the first function where they played out in the public, Eldoret show. Eldoret, where there was a standoff between who welcomes the president to take the stage, between Kalonzo
and Raila.
And that tells you the heat that is in that office. I do not think Gachagua had foreseen how serious this is going to be. And so he relied so much on the promise that the presidency and vice presidency or the deputy presidency is one. And again, he went further, and they agreed that the budget of State House will run both
from the state.
So there wouldn't be an accounting officer. But you see, they change. So those things really keep undermining the formal government, because give it to any president, they always have their henchmen, people who are close. There's nothing you can do with Farouk Gibet, just like there's nothing you could do with say Osea Keblagat during. No, I grew up at a time when we thought Kanu executive chairman, branch chairman is very senior. We had somebody called Osea Keblagat, very senior, because in the KBC news bulletin, he would come very close to number 3 or 4. And the Baringo Kanu branch executive chairman was today here. So, and that tells you who was he. what made him? Because actually he had no business being in Nairobi as a Kanu executive chairman. Sorry, he's deceased now. May his soul rest in peace.
Yeah.
But that office never existed in Baringo. It was just an amorphous office, but it was about being close to the president. So, and there are signs that you see that from a deputy president that there is a need with the informal setup of government, that he feels maybe where the kitchen where he is not where the most succulent food is served, is prepared. Maybe you have been put in a second-rate or third-rate kitchen. Then when you are being given the little you have, then you get the aroma from the main kitchen. You are wondering, are we
in the same
are we the
office?
same room? So that is the thing. I have a sense that there's a bigger story behind what is happening in this government.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, I may be right, but I think part of it is we went down to hunt an animal.
Yeah.
We killed it. Then the question is, how do we share the carcass?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
but-
who has gone with the best parts? And therefore, the crumbling might be an expression of disaffection with how it was shared. And let me ask, where do you see politicians producing millions in Harambes
Every day.
to this in Kenya today?
Yeah.
Somebody gives 10 million. Maybe those are the signs that we need to listen, that we need to read and listen to Gachagua behind, not just interpreting politics.
Yeah.
Of course, then he's been told, forget about 2032. We may not be there to live. So, what is being told is, your ambition from now to 2027, you are
A
around
mass.
roller coaster.
Yeah.
You'll not run for president. That's a silent message. You can't run for president in 2027. You wait until 2032.
And 2032, you are disadvantaged by
We do-
everything that
and
is
we-
happening in between.
And we don't know whether you'll be alive.
Yeah, nobody
Think-
knows.
So,
Uh,
perhaps
yeah.
question to Tanui
Yeah.
is, at what point then does an individual in that space comes to the realization?
Yeah.
At what point do you think Gachagua comes to the realization and says, hey, these kitchens are different?
The
At what
food
point?
is- yeah.
Is there an event preceding that? Or it's natural? Because once you go, one of the things that we understand, Tanui, is even access to State House is a little bit difficult because it's formal. You have to, even if you're the deputy president, you don't just drive in. Yet, there are people who just drive in, they're saluted, their cars are marked by numbers, right? So at what point is this realization that, hey, things are not okay here?
I think in the transaction of politics and negotiation, everyone is like an honeymoon. It's like what Mo used to say. It doesn't matter what a man tells a woman during seduction. You can even promise heaven.
You can't deliver.
And you can't
plot of land.
deliver.
On the third day after marriage, you ensure that there is no meat, there is kumawigi alone
In
on
the
body.
house.
And you say, since
Since we are
we are
together.
here, this is the life we have. So I think in the transaction of politics, in the negotiation, your ego is elevated, your worth is exaggerated, and your resource base and
Is-
ethnic base is massaged.
Yes.
And therefore you come with that feel of I am the one. It takes time, and I think that's why there isn't any specific event. You start seeing subtle signs. The president has a big function where he should go. You are told to go and manage maybe the alcohol
backyard.
problem in Central. It is very serious. Then somebody else goes to represent the president in African Union. There are small things, but I think the bigger one is the expression of power. What are the elements of power? How do you demonstrate power? It is in what you are able to do in that government for your people. It's not what we see. It's not addressing
Yeah.
going to represent president function. It's not about. It is what appointments can you make? Do you feel that in terms of wealth sharing that comes with politics, your side is getting it? All these things you're hearing about taxes, 1 mile, those are just symptoms of a bigger grumbling and fight for certain influence. So I think for Gachagua and his people, he's actually between, sorry to say, the devil and the deep blue sea. And this is not to say there's a president who is a devil or something. It's just an English expression.
Yeah.
Where either way, you do not know how to navigate. Or the easiest one is between a rock and a hard place. You really don't know where you are safe. You want to moderate your ambition, they say you are becoming a villager. Remember Gachagua started saying, me, I'm not as educated as you, Mr. President. Nisaidia hata niende shule kidogo. They said my clothes are very, not like Ken's here.
Yes.
But I've just seen, I hope you have noticed that he has undergone extreme makeover.
Yeah.
But the issue of the mechanics of politics is about how do I make people see I have power? It is how many people can I employ? Who people get loyal to you when they have their problem, you sort out with the money. That's why you cannot divorce money and politics. And therefore get wealth sharing. He is the one, remember, Gachagua, who told us about shareholding in government. So if you talk about shareholding and you have that analogy in your mind, that is the view of how power transaction, and then you realize, the majority shareholder always gets the higher bonus. Then you realize you are getting peanuts. The definition is he needs the ideology, and now I see the agony in him. There's a self-contradiction. I am not what people are seeing. So if you told Central you are shareholders,
yes,
and then during the annual general meeting you are getting peanuts. And you cannot and they ask you, so what have you brought us?
so Charles, I also need to ask you a question.
Yes.
There's a meme, and these things are very practical, that says, I wish I was as silent as the deputy president of Uganda. Does it check your ambition? Because who knows these guys? Like, if you're just quiet, it works so well.
But you see, Ugandan politics is different from Kenyan politics. Ugandan politics is a genre. Museveni has been there for many years, 30 plus.
But there's also a factor of what you've said. The current president we have is really a very strong personality.
Yeah.
And Museveni might be quite, he's in a special class of his own.
Yeah.
But if you have a strong personality and the deputy president is also behaving or purporting or actually being a strong personality himself, then obviously you'll have a clash.
Yeah.
And since independence, if you remember what Tanui was telling us about Jaramogi and Mzee Kenyatta, it was more or less the same thing. They were very strong personalities who had a very strong political basis, and in terms of personality, not just divorced from what else they had. They have very strong, personality. So obviously it was a question of when, not if. I mean, it would eventually
to happen.
An experience I always like sharing about this, how to define this relationship between the deputy president or vice president, whatever it is, provided the de facto deputy of the president, is in the case of Moi. You, of course, all remember when he came to power, he was supposed to be a transition president.
Yeah.
They talked about passing cloud, the constitution. They had tried to change the constitution before that. But one thing I later realized when you research, whereas Moi looked like he was so a lame duck under Kenyatta, and he played safe. People forget that at that time, the entire police department was under the deputy of the office of the deputy president, of the vice president.
Yeah.
Prisons department was under there, and therefore, Moi had the best intelligence gathering system that was hidden back end, coming to him, and he knew what everybody thought about him, and he was not sure. And he would deal with those issues behind the scene. When he came to power, I assure you, the first thing he did, the police, intelligence, and the prisons department were all moved
to the office of the president,
where he consolidated power.
Yeah.
So that tells you. So the most important is, if I were Gachagua, is you maintain some sense of intelligence gathering system, understand, so that you do not read the president or the face of the president or the people he's with by the mere fact of what they tell you and the face expression. Try and understand what is it that is happening behind me. If you want to know how strong you are, listen to monitor the courage of those people who are junior to you, who are close to the president, what they say. And I was watching a video yesterday of Kimani Ngujiri, and he was saying, I don't know how true it is, that the governor of Kirinyaga was in the same aircraft with the president when she tweeted about the issue of the deputy president's office not being confined. So the question he was asking is, if this lady can do this, the honorable lady can do this in a presidential jet, what does it tell you? The courage she has. Maybe Gachagua is parking at the wrong tree.
There are people
food for thought.
Who is owning the dogs? Who is the dog owner? Nzau.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah.
It's you can see from the analogy that has been presented from former Bahati MP, Kimani Ngunjiri. These things there are no coincidences in politics. The fact of the matter is that even if they are not in the same plane, Madam Anne Waiguru with the president, she was in that delegation which was going to New York. And either they had arrived or they were, basically she was part of the presidential cohort which was in New York. And at that time, that's the time the deputy president was really boiling. He was all over the place. I saw him addressing a political rally on top of a vehicle from a function. The same pattern which was happening when his boss now. You remember when his boss was fighting with the former president. So beginning to happen just 2 years after the election is really a bit worrying, and also unprecedented. It doesn't, at least in the last few, and Tanui would correct me, in the last few presidencies, I don't think we have seen that level. That it's so fast. The fallout is a bit fast. At least since 20.
It was bound to happen. Sorry to interrupt you. If you look at the fact that you see, it was a very acrimonious election. And when they came in, there was a sense of triumph and the celebration mood and laughing at those that they defeated, crushing, stripping all officers of any footprint of Uhuru. But then they immediately went into 2027 campaign, if you remember. We started seeing politicians, you don't see a difference between the entourage when they were vice president, deputy president, and now when they are president, when they were
deputy president,
running with. They started putting the country in the mood of an election. And suddenly, people started feeling, am I being left off the blocks? I also have to join. This race has started. And the unfortunate thing with that is that government programs and whatever you promised tend to take the background. By the way, it is very, maybe Ruto has the best ideas, but they don't dominate the political discussions in the villages. People see their criminal more and and the show of, we have won, we are here, we are going even to be the next one. And then this guy starts saying, if this guy talks about the next election and even 2032 like I'm not there, what do I do? Yeah. So it's the mood that we are in, and it's going to be like this up to the end.
My duty is to ensure that I protect the president's vote 2027. I mean, he's made that apparent.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's made that apparent. I had a question, but I think it's been answered.
Yeah.
Then it's because then the question for Nzau would have been, so what would have, in the ideal situation, what would have Rigathi Gachagua done in this situation? I mean, first, don't forget the fact that Rigathi is, so to say, a rookie in the mainstream politics. One term, member
MP,
of parliament, then deputy president. It doesn't just happen like that, right? While there's so many seasoned people in politics. So the ideal situation, because Rigathi also in the main politics, he was learning. He's played in the background, but foreground, this is the first time, right? So what would have been the ideal situation for the deputy president to survive this at least for 5 years?
The ideal situation is exactly what Tanui has said, in my opinion. If you recall how former President Moi played the game during that time, it was a transition of, passing cloud, like they said. But you take it in your stride. You observe, you learn a lot of things, you organize yourself in the background. Don't get, if you are pulled, you've seen people pull people into the mud. You just pull someone into the mud, you become part of the game. And it's much too early for him to begin serious campaign for a race which I believe should be people believe should be 2032, much less 2027. So a bit of holding back, but also organizing himself, being very strategic in how he does his things, and not just come out on all-out war against his president, his boss, and for that matter the people, because it's just two years after the election, who is really ready for serious campaign?
But we haven't seen the deputy president strictly say, come all out against the president. I haven't seen that.
You should have, I think you have seen.
Which one?
There are many instances he has come out quite very bold and saying guys in Rift Valley.
The
When you
Eldoret
say
question,
Rift Valley,
I
what
think-
do you mean? Guys in Rift Valley
Yeah,
are the ones who are...
actually, I sense that it was his last weekend. This
Eldoret
visit to
function.
Eldoret
Yeah.
specifically was
To-
to reach the constituency of the president.
president.
It was deliberate.
Because when he went there, he said there are some people here
Here.
who come here
Mhm.
to Central to mess things up for us.
Mhm.
And the subsequent responses by people like Sudi is
Sudi.
very clear that the path lines are drawn. But
Okay.
more than that, what I wanted to I wanted to make an observation like this. You see, when you are the deputy president, you are also a politician. If you reduce yourself to a career pure technocrats, like you run like a CEO, a deputy CEO, things won't work. It involves a lot of politics. But very cunning presidents have tried this in Kenya, and it has worked. They actually light fires in your backyard so that it confines you there. They
Keep on
set
trying to
parallel.
put
it-
Yes, you are here. You are told you know so and so. This group were here. So every time you are putting out fires, and
You have no time to
and you may be putting off little fires in Central while people are moving their political frontiers. By the time it
You
comes
come.
to the real campaign, he's already tired. Because remember, it's resources. Gachagua, 1 week, he says he told us he was doing self-reflection. He switched off his phone. Do you believe that?
No.
No.
He was meeting delegations
definitely.
every day.
Yeah.
And
But-
the delegations come cheap. Can I come to your place without expecting some
Without taking tea.
tea or milk or something?
Tanui,
There must be some-
you know, there's an article you wrote some time back, the fight of Kilkenny cats.
Yes, I remember.
You remember?
It's a Scottish story that.
So is this
nobody
the fight
knows-
of Kilkenny
no,
cats?
let me just explain. Let me just explain what it is. You see, there's a Scottish story about two cats that fought
Yes.
until only the tails remained on the hanging line.
Yes.
So nobody saw the bodies. They just said the Kilkenny cats fought each other until you saw. But I don't know whether you've seen any political tale. But
The fight is on.
but
Yes.
but this thing has a very it has a bit of self-immolation. I pity a deputy president, especially when a president who on the face value gives you the confidence that you know everything that's happening, you are part of the discussion. Then you start probably seeing more junior people with very they are called in siniqua position. Siniqua positions are offices you are given just to read newspaper. The moment you are not there, they come and ask, why is this guy not in office? And you have no role. You have not been given any duties, just to be seen. So some of them, like if I were me, you leave a pair of glasses there and have another one. You go and do your own thing. They say just go near. But siniqua, useless position. So when you realize that the position is, can you imagine? If in recruitments, what role does he have? I don't know. It's an open question. What does he feel politically? Does he feel influenced? There is the replacement of the KDF general commander. Those are subtle signs that are never anywhere. And I always tell people, if you want to understand our president, William Ruto, look at how he deals with issues and go back to the Moi book and see what he does.
Yeah.
And you draw the parallels.
And you see, when I always say, when in doubt about what next action he'll take, go back to how Mzee may have dealt with. There's a certain, it may not be 100% because of the sophistication of society and politics
Changes
of
and
now,
Yeah.
But one thing for sure is nothing, you will not be told that you do not play the space that I promise you. You'll only see in subtle signs. And these are signs that I think Gachagua may have shared with his confidence. You may have the best office. You ask for renovation. How much does he want? Get busy.
30 million.
But your renovation. Do this. But there's nothing that pains a politician than junior people to wield more power than you. And you call yourself a deputy president and you tell people, there's a Kalenjin saying that when you are deputy president, they say the distance between me and presidency is like the distance between the nose and the mouth. So you have come to the front. So you are near there.
But you can talk it out.
Yes, you can just say. So Ruto used to say, guys, now the distance between us and power
Yes.
is between, it's like the space between the nose
And the mouth.
So Gachagua is naturally would feel that he's very near, and that makes him even more insecure when it looks like there's some interference. The only thing that I'm worried about is, in Kenyan politics, we have reduced the space of time to look like election is next year,
Yeah.
and therefore everyone is pulling out all the daggers. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanui. Nzau, I think we need to close this podcast. Has Gachagua come to realization that things are thick?
No, he hasn't, and probably I think he's only beginning to get the feel of what Tanui was saying, what this actually means. So in the next few, maybe months, maybe weeks, maybe years, I don't know, he will come to full realization of the ambivalent position that he's been placed. And like I said before, it is up to him to really take time to understand and learn from the history of the others and see how he can now apply himself to be able to wither all these things and be able to remain in a better position in the run-up to the next general election. For now, he doesn't seem to have quite figured it out, in my opinion.
But he wouldn't be in so much danger because at least the Constitution, unlike other deputy presidents,
allows
him.
Yeah.
And of course, guys, if you know what happens if there is change of presidency after 2.5 years in midterm, you have him as president. So that might so you can feel the anxiety that I am
heir apparent.
Am I heir? Yeah. You know, when you say apparent, you know the opposite of heir apparent, according to Saint the politics of Orengo is heir presumptive. So you may not know the difference between when you are the heir apparent and when heir presumptive.
But I think the same question to Nzau. I don't think I would underestimate Gachagua. He's played politics for a long time. For a long time. So I wouldn't underestimate.
A long time? He has not been there for a very long time.
A background, because he has related with these politicians from the time Uhuru Kenyatta became the minister for
finance,
local government. Yes. So
government.
He knows in the background how these games are played. And remember, one of the person that he was the PA became president. He must have learned a few things. So I wouldn't say that I wouldn't underestimate his ability to realize things are thick. I think he knows, but probably the only thing he doesn't know, he doesn't have immediate answers. Because again, he's playing against one of the smartest politicians in this country who thinks he is ahead of you.
No, the thing he has is not how politics is transacted. I think the role he played more as like from the district officer and all that is more of the intelligence area, which he needs to refine on, because they are agents of politicians. They are not politicians themselves, but they are agents of the system. So I think he could have a lot to do of knowing what's happening. But my friend, when you are deputy president, you don't choose who you are with every day. You don't choose your bodyguards. You ride it the same okay. They know where you sleep. So you feel at times you are monitored. You just go back to the story of Moi. They went up to his bedroom. Remember what made me one was wanted to resign, saying we are looking for arms that you brought from Uganda after you had come from a trip from Uganda. So even
and you can't stop them.
And you can't
stop the system.
You can't stop the system. But I think that's the most important thing is what Nzau is saying, that and even yourself you said, you know, he needs to refine and very fast how he extricates himself from this mess, because soon it will look like he's confronting the president, and probably that is where his enemies are luring him.
That driving
to create a friction point, because if he starts coming to the public, if he starts going to take on Kinasudi, it's the question then that you'll ask: whose agents are they? Have you really identified? These are people who have nothing to lose politically. You can bring you to the mud, like you're saying, and they invite you and they enjoy the dirt, like the pig. And you are not used to with your 3-piece suit again. So you train the pig.
Actually, Sudi said as much. He told him, I don't care. I've fought many battles. I don't fear anything. I mean, you can't fight. As a deputy president, you're fighting with an
MP.
So the most important thing is what he does now that the president has come back, what kind of rapport or political agreement he will have with the president. He has a very short space, because only the president who can silence both sides of the divide. That we are building one unitary party, UDA, a political machine. Now, when you show like this disintegration, remember it will split. It has a direct effect on UDA. Lemuru 3 was actually a political journey towards another party. If you look at the 10 demands that Kiyono talked about, that were distilled from Lemuru 3, they were very clear. One of them is that Central will never again go into a political negotiation without its own party. So it will only have a party that it uses as a platform to negotiate, not individuals. And that's a very telling statement to the president, because it means fragmentation. and it is against what he's trying
to build.
and nothing unites Central Kenya than one party across, because then it will there will be no Karua and Gachagua. It will be that we are in one. I did number 2 in that Limuru 3 agreement that Central Mount Kenya politicians made a mistake of letting Ruto pick Gachagua, and they had no say. So they have said they want to organize a mini election before the next election to choose their own running mate. So I don't know how it will work in Kenya, but it tells you what they are saying. We have the numbers, but we divided. We will not make any decision. Thank you.
So Tanui, the last thing to you is that you said that Gachagua coming to realization. There's and Sudi fighting Gachagua is like when Kuria Kanyinge actually hounded Josephat Karanja out of office.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was saying, that the president can make you very busy.
Yeah.
You remember all Moi's vice presidents, they had people called Kanu chairman they had to deal with, who sounded more. Remember, Moi will chair cabinet, then he goes chairs the party organ.
Yeah.
And even expel ministers. Remember Okigi Amayo?
Yeah.
So when you, what Gachagua needs to be very clear about is where should I lie in this fight? Am I crossing the line? Because if he is not careful, maybe being given distractions. I mean, if you remember Kichatara, Malulu Mutisia, you remember Kokiki Amayo, Kanu chairmen were very serious people. You would Philemon Chalagat, those guys in Baringo. So when they will have their time with the president, but do not carry that debate outside the boardroom with the president. It will infuriate them, and it will unleash them for you silently and smile at you in the public. So Gachagua should be very careful. You know, they say when you are walking through a path in a bush, and you see the leopard's tail, because it never shows its head, it just gives a sound. If you touch that tail,
be ready
to face the consequence, because its kittens are somewhere. So that even if it slips, the tail is on the path. And so he's probably going to stroke the tail
of a leopard.
And Charles, you remember what they say about if you find a tortoise on a table?
No. Someone has placed it on top.
It's actually an analogy called the turtle pole.
The turtle pole. Yeah. Gentlemen, it has been real, deep insights in politics and the Deputy President's office. Thank you, Nzau, for showing up. We welcome you more often to these podcasts. And of course, usually I'm here with Ken and Tanui. You've done very well in the new studio today. Keep watching.